Cantrip Items. All right, these bad boys are unique items that will have more almost like trinket-like effects on them in addition to the traditional piece items you expect, which is stamina, main stat, and then some secondary stats. Now, the bright side is these obviously aren't in the trinket slot. They're in your back pieces, belts, etc., etc. Examples of existing ones in the current season are things like the Void Blade and the Secret Neck, for example. So now we have the Datamined for the 11.1, which will be season 2. Let's go over it. Now, as we go through all these, the Fury Warriors very much love like haste mastery, but predominantly mastery. Typically, haste quite quickly gets out-simmed in terms of crit and versatility coming up on par as a point-by-point basis of what's better. But mastery is like the be-all and end-all. And most of these are actually mastery high, so do keep that in mind as we go through them all. Very exciting. First one, we got the Test Pilot's Go Pack, just a back piece. That will give you, obviously, whatever primary main stat you happen to need. For us, it will be strength anyway. But as you can see, haste and then mastery high, which is really cool. And it gives you a nice boost of movement speed. This will diminish very quickly over 1 second, but it's going to give you that quick burst. Traditionally, warriors don't really have too much in-combat mobility issues, but we don't really get intervene anymore. So that is something that we used to have that we don't have. It'll be good for mechanics, for example, that it's like, oh shit, we need to stack over there. And you're able to get there quickly instead of having to blow your heroic leap or things like that. So that's at least somewhat useful. You're gonna get it because why not, right? You'll notice all these also have requires level 80, whereas this says it requires level 70, which is very weird. Maybe this is something that could drop in the warband version of it, and you can send it to an alt when they level at ridiculously high eye level. Surely that's just a typo or a mistake or something through the PTR. But if it's not, hey, I mean, it's not going to be that kind of giga crazy, but cool. All right, nice little cloak there, so happy days. Next, we have the literal best in slot. That's what the weapon's called. It's a two-hand mace. This is a bit quirky. Now, the first thing you'll notice is it obviously is strength and agility. You can use it out of combat and it will turn it into an intellect mace. Very weird. Don't understand why they do that. It's rather odd. But more importantly, you'll see that the amount of strength and agility that it gives is, typical to maybe a typical weapon you would expect. But when it goes into the intellect version, it's kind of massive. So I think maybe they want this particular weapon to sort of suit whatever, I guess, playstyle you might be using on hybrid classes. I don't know whether this will turn around and be like, going to be replacing shields for the likes of Elemental Shaman or Holy Paladin or anything like that. But there's potential there because that is a fuck ton of intellect. Let's just make that very clear. But the unique cantrip part of it is that you'll have a chance to get a random secondary stat for 15 seconds. Now, the big be-all and end-all to take away from this as well is the approximate procs per minute. With 3 procs per minute, in a 60-second span, you're expecting about 45 seconds of it to have some sort of extra secondary stat. That's actually pretty decent in terms of uptime. It'll obviously fluctuate. Sometimes you might get it more within that 60-second time frame, sometimes less. The uptime should be relatively good, sort of 70% uptime-ish, I'm expecting. But you got to keep in mind as well that this has no secondary stats where typically a weapon would. So you kind of expect it to have a decent uptime because of that. You can then use it in combat to cheat and immediately gain the 454 of your highest secondary stat as a way to guarantee the one you want. And that'll also be for 15 seconds. However, when you're out of combat, then you can unuse it to change it into this intellect version. So the understanding is I don't think using it in combat is going to force it to change to intellect. If that is, it's completely worthless and no one will ever use it because you're constantly forcing your main hand weapon to change between agility and strength and then into the intellect version. I think it's more of a convenience factor that whenever you're out of combat, you can switch it to an intellect if you so choose because you might have, might need to go a different spec for healing purposes or damage or whatever the case may be. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that's how it'll work. And it'll only be relevant for things like maybe an Elemental Shaman and the Holy Paladin thing I was talking about. I highly doubt, or even Druids, I suppose, they can use maces, so that'll be at least useful. But the most notable thing is keep in mind there's no secondary stats and you're relying purely on this proc and its relevant uptime from there. Now, next up we have Capo's Molten Knuckles. Very good fist weapon. Especially with how strong the tier set bonuses are looking for Outlaw Rogue. You will most likely see Outlaw Rogue be pretty good next season. That's my preliminary kind of guesstimation. With this particular weapon as well, you can see that you don't have any secondary stats to write home about again, but you get a high chance to follow up your attacks with a fiery gilded uppercut, dealing a bunch of fire damage to your target, and more importantly, it'll continue to spatter extra fire damage over 5 seconds to nearby enemies. It will do reduced damage beyond 8 targets. However, that fits really nicely into the flow of like an Outlaw Rogue, being able to use your blade flurry to basically be cleaving the shit out of 5 targets and stuff, or up to 8 with this particular weapon, but this will be quite good. I have a feeling, a lot of Outlaw Rogues and even Enhancement Shamans, for example, are obviously going to be picking this up. Whoever can use this fist weapon is going to get a decent chunk out of it. And again, you also have to consider Demon Hunters as well that have a lot of like plus to fire damage through their talents. And as such, they'll be able to pick up this fist weapon to help them out as well. So very good for all those fist weapon using classes and synergizers especially well. I look forward to most notably Outlaw Rogue, and Demon Hunters will also gain a bit of oomph out of this as well. Demon Hunter tanks, for example, for free extra damage. Anything that scales up your fire damage might impact this as well. Now, just a diamond. This is for a ring. Again, most notable, massive mastery. This is definitely going to be on the best on slot list for Fury Warriors, but it almost functions like the cloak back in season 2 of Dragonflight, where you like steal your allies' benefits and stuff. But there's at least a bit of a give and take here, so that's not too bad. Take credit for your allies' deeds up to once every 12 seconds, and then gain 130 of their highest stat. This will stack up to 10 times, so you'll have 1,300 of their highest stat, and it'll obviously dissipate after you leave combat, cool, but then you have a 10% chance to get caught in the act and therefore transfer any accumulated amount back to your ally instead. So sure, this won't be great if our worst stat happens to be the ally's greatest one, and it will be interesting to see how it dictates which ally to grab it from. But overall, I mean, you're already getting what you expect out of a ring anyway, which is a fuck ton of mastery, and typically your best secondary stat through haste as a Fury Warrior. So this is already just a ring that you'll probably have on your radar in some capacity, and then allowing up to the ridiculous amount of extra secondary stat, and then you can give that back to your allies. Pretty good. And even if this secondary stat happens to be something that typically isn't too great for us, like crit or versatility, given how much mastery we're getting and how close we're going to be getting to the diminishing return levels, it's actually kind of not a bad thing at all to have crit or verse be spiked up. And then, if we get caught in the act with the 10% chance, we give it back to our ally, which is also super useful as well. I think you'll find a lot of classes are going to be chasing for this. Again, if some of them aren't mastery enthusiasts like Fury Warriors are, then that might call into contention whether or not it's worth it. But yeah, very, very good ring. This will definitely be on people's lists, especially as a Fury Warrior. Also to note, the weird level 70 thing, again, I'm pretty sure this has got to be like some typo or something. Surely this wouldn't be allowed to give off to your lower allies, but who knows. Now, next we have a Vile Contamination effect. Now, this is present on a bunch of different weapons, so you'll see all weapon types have covered with this particular extra gimmick. So whether you're a gun, you're a mace one-hand user, a two-handed mace user, or another one-hand mace, but I guess it's it's agi instead of intellect, cool. So all possible uses of this will be covered nicely. For our end, most notably two-hander as a Fury Warrior again. This time, again, just like last time, haste and mastery high. Love it. This is definitely going to be one on our radar. You'll stack up a shadow damage dot. And it'll stack every 3 seconds until their demise, so until the thing runs out. Now, this will stack up to 25 times, so we're expecting every 3 seconds, 25. Let's do some quick math, shall we? So let's go calc. We're going to go 25 times 3. That's how many seconds. Divide that by 60. So it's only a minute and a bit. So a minute and a half, you're going to stack it all the way up. This is going to be relevant in boss fights of like dungeons as well, to be honest, because it stacks quick enough that it will start coming online for the last end of the boss fights. And even some trash packs, to be honest, as long as you're in combat and you're stacking up, you got to remember you need a primary target. As soon as you switch targets, it will restart again. So that's the biggest issue in terms of trash packs. But on bosses, you'll be able to stack it up within that minute and a half, which perfectly synchronizes with all our cooldowns anyway. This will most likely be your main hand BIS weapon for sure. Reason being because, again, it comes with these secondary stats, which is very juicy, whereas the other two-hander that we will probably have in our offhand, to be perfectly honest, the best in slots, this will most likely go on our offhand, and then we can use it with our 2-minute timer, which doesn't quite synchronize with our cooldowns as much as we'd like, but we're still going to use it if we can. And yeah, that's what cantrips we've currently got datamined. Obviously, this is all subject to change, but I think we're eating pretty well as Fury Warriors. Honestly, we've got a lot of sources of high mastery gear, and with the whole dinar system, this is going to allow us to guaranteed at least 2 of these items. So hopefully you can get, for example, something like the ring and the cloak passively because they're quite early on bosses. And then you can use alternative dinars late in the season if you still haven't had a chance for these drops to guarantee these 2 weapons. So that's what we're dealing with. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.